Location, and we're here at ASUN 2013 with Eric Maruscak. Maruscak. All right.
My family removed the H sometime long ago just to mess with people, I guess.
All right. Now, how did you first get into the world of being an artist?
Well, I've been an artist since I was a kid. I was one of those kids who, when I was, first grade, second grade, people would be like, what do you want to do when you grow up? I never threw out any other options other than I'm going to be an artist. I've just always known. I've loved to draw since I was a kid. I preferred drawing over doing schoolwork. I preferred drawing over going out to do sports. I just always knew I'd be an artist at some point. Whether or not the types of jobs that were available as being an artist, I didn't learn about those till I got much older. I started seeing all the possibilities and potential, but in terms of just knowing I would do something related with art, it goes back as far as I can remember.
All right. Now, what steered your art in the direction of producing these chalk works here?
Well, what's really funny is I never did any chalk until 2004. I basically had done oil painting and drawing and even got into, started doing digital art when the digital came along, but I never considered this. Well, my hometown had an art festival where they wanted to close off a street and basically do a street painting festival where they would have a bunch of artists come and fill the street with artwork. Well, I'd never done that before, but they said, would you try it? We know you're an artist, would you try doing this? So I did it. The first piece I did was horrible, but I really loved this aspect. I loved the publicity, the public aspect of talking to people while you work, them seeing the art in progress, coming back and checking on your progress. It was an entirely different experience for me because I'd spent so much time drawing, at my art table, no one seeing anything till the finished piece was done. So I started immediately doing more art festivals like that, and I went big almost right away and started drawing comic book art because I'm a huge fan of comic book art, and I think it's a really underappreciated art form. So I said, what if I take characters like Batman, the Hulk, Superman, and draw them larger than life? Will people think this is cool at these art festivals where, next to me someone's painting a Renaissance painting or whatever? Will they think this is neat? Well, people loved it. So I kept doing that, put it in my portfolio, and was going to comic book conventions just to show my art, my illustrations and stuff, but threw a couple of those murals in there just for the heck of it. Yeah. Well, I met a guy at Artist Alley table, was showing him my stuff. He flipped the page, saw one of these Hulk murals, giant, 14 foot tall. He instantly spun my portfolio around and showed it to someone who was standing next to me, a guy I hadn't even noticed, and said, oh, he should do this at shows. The guy standing next to me was the director of the convention at the time. Just one of those in the right place at the right time stories where I always tell people, be nice to everyone who's around you. You never know who's standing next to you. He hands me his business card, said, hey, we should do this at a show. After about a month and a half or 2 months of emails back and forth, I actually came and did my first ever chalk art at a convention at this convention center in 2006. It was a wizard show. I actually did it outside in the front where there's the turnaround for cars. And that was my first ever piece of chalk art I did at a convention. Ever since 2006, I've been going from there.
Awesome. Now, because of the length of time that you have at these conventions to produce these images, at what pace do you have to work?
It's funny, every single show I get nervous I'm not going to get done. I've done more than 60 of these. You'd think by now I'd have it down, and I do, but I don't feel like I do. There's always this pressure, can I get it done in time? So the one thing I've found, at least early on, is not to rush. When I get to that first corner, I always start usually in the upper left, and I start working. I try not to think about everything behind me, all the open paper I haven't touched yet, the 3 days that are ahead of me. One of the most important things I've learned is don't rush. Take my time until I'm happy with the part I'm working on, and then move on. Do that for the entire first day, see where I get. Then by the second day, I can start judging, okay, how's my pacing going? Do I need to try some tricks to pick up the pace? Can I keep this going? So it's really something that over the time I've just gotten a natural feel for, more so than each piece is a little different. I know some parts, like when I hit skin tone, are going to take longer because there's up to 6 or 7 colors in that skin tone to really get the density I want. Other parts, like blues, you may only have to put a blue or 2 down. You can get that area much faster. So I have to kind of judge it from there as I go. But I seem to have a pretty good job of ending it always right around noon on the third day. I like to have it done before the show closes because I want people to be able to enjoy the finished piece for a few hours. So pacing-wise, I seem to have just naturally found this knack of hitting right at about the 30-hour mark, and all the pieces take about that to complete.
All right, sounds great. Now, what was your shortest project and your longest project when working for a convention or other promotional events?
My shortest project was, it's actually one of the most popular I have, funny enough. I have a chalk art 3D drawing I did of just a brick hole in the ground. I did it at an art festival where I had an evening to get it done. So I had like between 5 and 8 when it got dark. So in 3 hours, I did this small 3D chalk art piece. Took a picture of it with me posing in front of it like I'm falling. Everyone loves that. It's like their favorite piece. It took me 3 hours. It's like my shortest one, and everyone loves it. I'm like, well, what about the one next to it that took 12 or 14? They're like, no, I love this brick hole. I'm like, okay. So that one was my quickest, and it was one of my easiest, and it was done outdoors for a simple chalk art event. One of my biggest was actually for the same company I did this one for, Funimation. It was at the 2009 New York Anime Festival. That one took about 36 to 37 hours to complete. It was 9 feet wide, which is the same as this one. I think it was 14 or 15 feet tall, almost this size, but it had 11 characters in it, I think, rather than, I think this is 5. So I had 11 characters, different expressions, different looks, outfits, clothing. It was anime, so all the color had to be bright. It took me forever. I worked really hard on that one, and that was probably one of the longest ones I ever did.
All right. Now, how have some of your works been received at conventions like Otakon, SDCC, and ASEN?
I've heard mostly nonstop positive responses. When I did San Diego Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con had tons of people coming, but they came specifically for Nintendo because I was doing a piece for Nintendo at the time, and they had pretty much built their own gamers lounge. So I didn't have other artists to compete with. I wasn't in with the Artist Alley. I was in this area for Nintendo, so when people came in, they flocked over to the piece, they watched me work, they really enjoyed it. It was the biggest thing in the area. Otakon, I love that show. It's really just a fun... I try to explain Otakon to people who've never been. I'm like, imagine going to a costume ball with 40,000 people in it. If you're at this show and you're not in costume, you're one of the vast minority. Everyone there is there to have fun. So when I'm doing the piece, I get there's energy there. There's a lot of positive and good responses. So the big shows like San Diego Comic-Con and New York Comic-Con and Otakon and Anime Central, which is now my second show, it's been almost wholly positive. Now, you do get that random person who you hear over your shoulder that critiques it. They say something. Maybe they don't like the character. Maybe they don't like the style to begin with, but they say something negative. 1,000 people a day could say it's awesome, it's beautiful work. I remember that one person who was just said the negative thing about it. That's what always, as an artist, sticks with you, and you're just like, there's that person that didn't like it. So, vast majority, 99.9% seem to really enjoy the work, but it's those few that always make me go, I wish I could do better.
All right. What type of murals did you do for the Star Wars celebrations?
I did Star Wars Celebration in 2010 and last year in 2012. Both were for their Clone Wars TV show. In 2010, and this was a tricky one, I was doing a piece that involved the villains of Season 3. What everyone didn't know was there was a new villain being announced, Savage Opress, who was Darth Maul's brother in the Clone Wars. Well, no one had seen him, no one had heard of him, and they sent me some artwork and said, this is it, this is all we can give you, it's like a character model from the show, but you gotta draw your mural and you can't show him. I'm like, well, normally I at least get the sketch done before I get to the show. I do the outline so I can start coloring. No, you can't put anything, it's gotta be blank. So I took the character models of the 3 characters they gave me, which was Asajj Ventress, Count Dooku, and Darth Maul, and I laid them out so that they worked from top to bottom, and Darth Maul was big in the lower corner because I knew that's where I would get to later. I drew around him. I drew the character sketches and left a big blank area in that corner. So many people were like, that's a weird design, why is it blank? Then they started getting, oh wait, there's gonna be something there, and I'd be like, yeah, I can't say anything yet. So by the 3rd day, people were guessing. I had people coming back going, oh, it's going to be this, oh, it's going to be that, and they all wanted to know what was going to be in that corner. Then George Lucas, on the 3rd day of a 4-day show, has a big event in the theater and announces the character. Well, then they come out of the event, and I'm like, okay, I can now draw the character. So I had to rush sketch him out and then color him in, and I had to finish that character by the end of the last day. I had about a day to do it. I cranked on that one, but I got it done, and it's one of my favorite pieces. I really love doing that. Last summer I did for the Clone Wars, it was 11 different characters, 10 of which it said, who will fall? 10 of which could be possible people who will die that season. So of course people were guessing back and forth, but I didn't have to hide any of it. I could get the whole sketch done before I came to the show, and then I just colored it at the show. That piece was great too, I really loved it. So I loved the Star Wars conventions, I love doing pieces for the Clone Wars. I'm hoping now with Episode 7 coming out, Lucasfilm, if you're paying attention, I want to get a chance to do another one. So.
Yeah. And these films are going to be coming out a lot faster than the first 2 trilogies have been too. So.
What, every 2 years, I think they're saying. I think every year is, or every 2 years is one that's part of the trilogy, and the opposite ones are like standalone movies. That's what I've heard. Don't quote me on that, but.
All right. Now, Have you sometimes been in awe of the companies that you work for, like Lucasfilm, as we've discussed, or ESPN?
It's funny because you have to maintain a balance. I'm a fan. I love Star Wars. I love anime. I love comic books. So when I'm asked to do something by a famous artist like Alex Ross, or do a piece like Star Wars for Lucasfilm, there's that part of me that's a fan that goes, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, I'm like excited. And then the professionalism has to kick in. You go, but it's a job. I have to do this art. It's going to take me 30 hours to do. It has to look dead accurate or the fans aren't going to be happy. It has to be as good as I can do. So you get into that professional mode afterwards. But I do have those moments where I'm in awe of, oh wow, this is Lucasfilm, and I'm doing it a second piece for them. That's fantastic. And I've gone on podcasts. A friend of mine's do a podcast about the Clone Wars TV show. And it's always funny when I go on and they say, well, LFL artist Eric Maruscak, and they're calling me Lucasfilm artist. I'm like, I guess officially I am, but it's funny to hear that said. So that being said, once I'm at the show, all business, get it done. But when I did the first one, Star Wars in 2010, it wasn't a huge secret, but it was enough that not everybody knew. George Lucas actually came onto the show floor that Friday morning, 2 hours before the show opened, and walked the show floor. So I got to talk to him for about a minute. And yeah, I was a fan. I was basically like, oh my God, this is George Lucas, and I love his stuff. I love Star Wars, and I grew up with it. And I tried not to I tried to be professional and talk it through, and I was. But inside, I was just like, oh, this is George Lucas. So I'm a fan like everybody else.
Absolutely. All right. Now, what does the future hold for you and these beautiful chalk murals that you produce?
Well, right now, I have Otakon coming up in August. Yeah. I might be going to the Penny Arcade Expo in Seattle, but it's not 100% sure, so I'm not calling that one a lock yet. I've done a number of New York Comic Cons, hoping to get back there in the fall. Hoping to squeeze in a couple more shows this summer. We'll see. I'm actually getting married 2 weeks from yesterday, so right now I've kind of left a gap so I could focus on that. I've been away too much, and now I got to kind of focus on the wedding. But after that, more shows. One thing I'd love to do that I haven't gotten a chance to do much of yet is horror conventions. I think that the idea of imagine a 14-foot tall Freddy with the red lighting and everything. I'm like, the imagery would be fantastic, but I haven't had a chance to do a horror show yet. So I'm hoping when the fall comes and the horror shows really kick up, maybe I can finally get a chance to do a few of those. I've already had a couple shows ask me about next year, so there's potential going into the future. So it's really been moving along really good. I'm trying to do as many of these as I can right now because doing a piece like this is rough on your body. You're on a cement floor for 30 hours, hunched over, your back takes a toll. My fingers bleed when I do these. So I know I won't be able to do them forever. I'm trying to do as many shows as I can now because in the future I'm going to have to drift more into my illustration work. I do digital illustration. I'm working on a webcomic with a company right now. So I'll be doing more and more of those styles of art as well, but I'm not going away with the chalk art. I'll still do as many of these shows as I can while I can, but I'm hoping to branch out and do illustrations of all sorts with different companies.
Is there any final words that you'd like to get to the fans out there?
Well, if you're interested in my artwork, you can check me out anywhere online. I go by Pepper Inc. That's my internet handle because Maruscak is too hard to pronounce and to spell. So I figured it's much easier to remember Pepper Inc., which is PEPPERINK, like the drawing ink. Pepperinc.com. Pepperinc.com. So that's my website, but I use that handle on Facebook. I use it on Twitter. My web channel even is Pepper Inc. I think it's Pepper Inc. 4242 on YouTube. I record time-lapse videos of this entire process. So maybe you've seen a picture or you've seen an interview, but if you haven't seen one of the time-lapse videos, I really suggest people check them out. I've done some for the Zelda piece I did for Nintendo at San Diego Comic-Con, the Madoka piece I did last year. I get to use the music from the shows or from the video game, and I sync it up, and you can see the entire 30 hours of work in about 5 minutes when I condense it down time-lapse. And it's just really neat to see it happening before your eyes. At times it looks like chalk is just coming out of my fingers and spreading across the paper. I love those videos, and they're something that I wish more people would really go and check out. So check out the videos, check out my website, get in touch with me by any of those means possible. Tweet me, send me a message on Facebook, check out the site and just contact me. I love to hear from fans, I love to talk to people, and hopefully you'll be seeing a lot more of me as the days and months come ahead of us.
All right, Eric Maruscak, thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on your upcoming wedding.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you everyone for coming out to ASEN. Thanks to Funimation for having me, and thank you to the show.